Welcome to Real Talk, brought to you by Travel Business Mastermind. In this episode, we're going to get serious again about your financials with Stephanie Cannon, the founder of SC Travel Design and a long tenured travel advisor who's learned both the hard way and the easy way that being your own chief financial officer is the path to freedom. So sharpen your pencils, get out your green ledgers, and let's get serious about owning your financials.
Hey.
Hi, Stephanie. Happy Thursday. 2 days after the election. This is a strange time to be having normal conversations, but these are important conversations because no matter what happened with the election, in fact, the election may make it even more important, the conversation that Stephanie and I are having today, is that you have got to get comfortable being your own CFO. And we're going to talk a little bit about what does that actually mean? Why is it important? But first, let's welcome Stephanie Cannon. Stephanie runs her own travel company. She's also, like Myrna and I, she consults in the industry to help travel advisors make their businesses better. So Stephanie, thank you for giving me 50, 60 minutes of your time today.
Yeah, so I've actually been a travel advisor since 2006. And of course, where I started and where I am today look completely different. You know, coming into the industry, brand new, not really having any other travel experience other than my own, and learning the processes and, you know, everything that goes into running a travel business was not what I thought it was going to be. So, and this coming from a financial person. Like my background is finance and accounting. So you would think that, but I got into it for freedom. So not just time freedom, but financial freedom, and just to be able to make the choices that I want to make in my life and not be run by a corporate environment, which kind of like, you know, puts the thumb down on you. Like you have to be here, you have to do this. And I was literally taking my work home with me all the time. Now, I'm not going to say that I don't do the same thing in my travel business. It's become a habit. So, you know, but so I had all along, even before travel was ever on my radar, used to teach at a vocational school after hours classes. So that was kind of like my extra income when I was first getting started in finance. So I've always had this teaching or kind of like coaching side to me and helping people, because there's certain things that just come very easy for me that maybe don't for others. So I had been thinking about it all along. I'm like, well, I know all this stuff. Like, how can I help other agents, other advisors, and business owners? And of course, pandemic hit. And that's when it all started coming to me because once you get your clients situated with everything that was happening back in March, then, you know, you take a little breather, kind of like reset because so much happened so quickly. Then I kept thinking like, how during this time, how can I not only help my business prepare for the future, but others as well?
Yep.
So that's
so now, describe a little bit about your philosophy of being a coach and consultant. You know, what works best for you in terms of the expectations that your clients have and what kind of work you want them to focus on so that they solidify and grow their business?
Well, what I've learned for myself, kind of making the crossover a little bit, was you can't sit in your indecision. That was huge for me because nothing happens, nothing moves forward if you're always second guessing and wanting to know, well, I just need to know this before I can do this. And it's a ripple effect through everything. So I've learned, like, just make a choice. There is no right or wrong. Every choice you make will lead you to the next lesson and the next lesson and the next lesson. Yeah. So we all learn from that. And that's the only way you learn is by doing. So that's kind of what I've.
Such fantastic advice. I mean, Myrna and I like to say our best clients are the continuous learners. And when they come to us, even if they have a goal, Rich, we want to put together a marketing campaign that may or may not include paid ads, but here's what we're trying to achieve. And when you engage with them, but they also say to you, if we don't blow it out of the water the first time, I'm okay with that because I need to learn what will and will not work for my business, what will not work for this platform, but may work for that platform, the messaging, the photographs, video versus still photos. The best business owners are those who have these open minds, but yet they're into the metrics. They want to see the numbers because they want to have that discussion with us about why do you think that worked and why that didn't? So I love what you just said.
Yeah, it's true with everything. I mean, one of the examples I always go back to from one of my mentors, we don't learn how to ride a bike by reading a book. You learn how to ride a bike by riding a bike. And you get better at your balance and, you know, turning and stopping and hitting road bumps and all this stuff by riding the bike.
Right. I'm a running coach, and that's one of the things that messages I always tell my clients is, look, I know you're struggling right now. You're going from 3 miles up to 5 miles and you're dealing with my coaching. And I say to them, but if you don't do it, you'll never know how to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And see how your body responds, and then recalibrate based on how your body responds. It's science. And numbers in a business tend to be kind of scientific. And you do have to graduate to the level where you've got so many numbers that you're doing things like taking out anomalies that may skew your numbers one way or the other. But it's still, you'll find your behaviors and the things you do that attract clients start to create a narrow band of ratios that you can start to manage if you start to see the patterns.
Right, exactly.
So what's been your experience in terms of business owners knowing their core financials? If you were to put if you were to take a pie and split it into slices, what percent of travel advisors that are and are not your clients, travel advisors that you just speak to and you pick up on the nuances, that they're really, you can tell they're really invested in their numbers and they get them?
Yeah, I think it's a very small piece, at least for the solopreneur type travel advisors. Now, I mean, there's differences if you're solo, if you have a small team, or if you have a brick and mortar, totally different business models with any of these. But me being a solopreneur, more of attuned to the conversations around numbers. And so many times I hear people talking about like, the numbers make my head hurt. I'm bad at math. Like, no, you're not bad at math, because we have so much technology that nobody has to add, subtract, multiply, and divide right now.
Right.
Like, we have the tools to do it. It's just not a priority or a focus until you see business owners are like, well, wait a minute, I don't have the money to pay for this. Like, what happened? I'm booking trips.
Right.
And then maybe they'll, pay more attention. And I also find too, coming from the financial background, that many advisors will just look at money in, money out. Like, that's a basic, because we keep our checkbooks. Well, I should say most probably keep track of what's in the checkbook, because you have to pay your bills every month. So you need to know what's available to pay, right? And then at the end of the year, you're putting together either your records or you've done some kind of bookkeeping along the way to take to your tax accountant. So at a minimum, like, that's a one thing that needs to happen. But there's so much more other indicators besides in and out of the money to make much, much better decisions, in the business.
So let's talk a little bit about why you think that is, because everything that we're going to say after this next 5 or 10 minutes really depends on business owners making an emotional decision to own this. Because, I find it when I have to do financials for our clients, they're putting way too much trust in me. They're then saying somebody else took care of it, and now I don't have to. And I don't like that. I want someone who's going to gradually grow into collaborating with me on that. Why do you think that resistance is there? And I've actually asked this question of two previous guests here, and they've all had slightly different answers.
Okay, well, mine may be slightly different as well.
Good.
So one is a commitment factor. You know, and it's different during a pandemic, of course, but non-pandemic times, our key focus is on our clients,
right.
On booking trips and putting together itineraries and all the things that we went into this business to do. So, but as an entrepreneur, you know, we're not just an agent or an advisor booking trips. As an entrepreneur and a business owner, we have all these other things that we also need to keep track of. Now, nobody's saying that everybody has to do them all. You can hire help to do them.
Right.
But one of my core beliefs is, as a business owner yourself, you at least need to understand how to do it, or the person you hire to do it may not be giving you everything that you should have.
Right.
So for me, it's more like, it's like I said, the commitment level, but it's also, people don't like to look at their numbers because their numbers mean something, or they're making their numbers mean something to them about their business and about them, and they don't want to face it.
Right. Well, that's what Brian Baird said 2 weeks ago. He said it's an emotional issue. It's our personal attachment to ourselves, and our relationship with money is very often the relationship we have with our own self-esteem, with, you know, how we feel about ourselves as an imposter in business versus an expert. And I agree with everything you just said. And you're right. There's a portion of each of those things that cause us to react this way. So it's probably not, there may be one or two things that are predominant, but it's a lot of it. And I was explaining to Sheila Folk a couple of weeks ago how so I'm a words person. I went to journalism school. I've always been a business owner. I've worked with my father in his business. And in the roles that I had, very often I had to be involved in the financials. When I worked at Virgin Atlantic, understanding where did I put my marketing and communications efforts based on the opportunity for the business. I had to make a metrics-based judgment about that. But when I got to American Express and I started sitting in on EVP level meetings, I was an internal resource to my internal client, the EVP of a business division. And I would sit in on his weekly meetings. And 75% of his weekly meetings were these large-sized, you know, printouts from the chief of finance and the marketing teams. And it was these huge spreadsheets with numbers. And the first 12 to 24 months of sitting in on these weekly meetings, my brain hurt. But over time, I would learn a piece of it and go, oh, wow, that piece over there relates to why Steve's profits are better over here. And these vintages is why Steve is making this marketing decision for the next year, because he's looked at his numbers and said, that's not as good an investment as this group of cardholders. And over time, I would say it was anywhere between 18 to 24 months, the veil started to lift. And now, to some degree, I was interacting with those spreadsheets the way a lot of those brilliant people in those board meetings with Steve, the way that they had become familiar and comfortable with them. And it was uncomfortable for me at first, but I started to come around to it. When did you realize that you wanted to go into finance? You have a CPA, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did you realize that that's what you wanted to pursue? Did numbers always make sense to you, or did you have to grow into numbers also?
No. So the only part of my accounting education and background that didn't make sense to me intuitively was the auditing. Like they have to do this whole section on auditing, and it's the, you know, a rigid process and paperwork and all this. And I'm like, just let me put the numbers in. So that was, and ironically, and it's probably because I told myself that story for so many years, you know, when I was going through college, that when I took, am I unfrozen?
Nope, you're good.
That when I took this Okay. When I took the CPA exam, that was the one part of the exam that I didn't pass on the first time. Like, go figure. Because I was telling myself this story and I believed it, that I wasn't good at auditing. And okay, so
The stories we tell ourselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
and everything about the numbers is a story. Like, being bad at math, or I don't understand it, it's too complicated. But don't make it complicated. Like, there's a choice. You're choosing to make it complicated, and you can choose to not make it complicated. And I know for some people who aren't numbers driven, that may not sound realistic, but anything that we do, our marketing, our social media, like talking to clients, asking for the fee, all this stuff, we overcomplicate it in our own brains, and it doesn't have to be complicated. And I think when people maybe start thinking that way, like just one thing at a time.
Yeah. It's, one of the things that we do at TBM is early on in our 12 module thing, we ask the subscriber to just fill out a very simplistic worksheet. It's like 5 Microsoft Excel cells, so it's a workbook. And they just have to fill out something very simple. And some of the cells are not even numbers, they're words. Because what we're trying to do is introduce to this individual slowly, look, you're going to fill this out. And basically, you're having a dialogue with yourself and to some degree us, because we review it with you. But you're having a dialogue, like you said earlier, there's a story in here about your numbers. And we want that story to kind of pop off the page so that it's not a bunch of columns and rows speaking to you. It's a narrative that tells you, oh, these are the clients I love working with. This is how much money they make for me. This is how much money they make for me versus my average client. Should I have more of these ideal clients than my average client? Is that the story I'm trying to tell myself?
Yeah.
And we try to start simple. Do you have any tips for anybody who's watching along what you said a couple of minutes ago? Start slowly, start simply to sort of work your way into this comfort level.
Yeah. There's quite a few things that you can look at.
Just one or two.
Simple indicators. So I have one, and it wasn't my to calculate this. Like, I always did the standard financials, as an accountant and tax preparer. Like, we do a balance sheet and a P&L and cash flow and all this stuff. And that's basically money in, money out, keeping track.
Right.
But I had another, a local photographer that actually did business coaching, came and talked at one of the meetings I attended and said, have you ever sat down and calculated how much it costs to operate your business per hour? And I'd never done that. I was like, no. I mean, I know how much money I need to bring in, how many people I'd like to book each month, like what that looks like. But I never sat down and made that calculation. And so I did, and it totally changed every decision that I made going forward. And even if I chose to work with a new client or a specific type of trip that the commission level wasn't as high, I had the information, knowledge, to a good choice.
Right.
So
I mean,
that was like super helpful.
Sheer brilliance. A cash flow statement has cash and income on the top, expenses on the bottom. And if you use a well-formatted workbook, it starts to tell you things. And if, like Shannon Stephanie said, if you then take those numbers and divide them by, let's say you only want to work 40 hours a week, you can then start to see what your hourly rate return needs to be to cover those expenses. Right. And I mean, you want to do at least that, right? You at the very least want to know, what does it take to get even with the subscriptions that I've purchased, software subscriptions, my yearly insurance costs, taxes, the fees that I'm paying to my host agency. You've got all that already sitting in your credit card statements, your bank statements. Pull it into the bottom half of your cash flow statement. And now you can start to do calculations, like Stephanie just said. You can sit there and go, what's my minimum hourly rate? Well,
Mhm.
if that particular booking is going to take you 8 hours and it's only going to get you 60% of what you need per hour, then you've got to start asking yourself, is that really the right client for me? Or are my expenses too high? It's one of the two. One more tip. What do you think is sort of like the basics that someone has to know?
So for me, it's like how many inquiries on average do you get per month and what's your close rate is really big, because because somebody contacts you doesn't mean they're going to book with you. Right. So, and it's not just on their side, it can be on your side. Maybe they're not the right client for you to work with and you kind of turn them away nicely. So you have to at least know those and how those relate to the money that you want to make in your business, as an overall goal.
Stephanie is just hitting every single point. I was thinking about this the other day when I was working with a client on a Facebook marketing campaign. And I said to them, we were trying to justify the expense. And because I was saying to them, well, you need to find new people. How are you going to do that in the pandemic era when you can't go to a consumer expo or whatever? And if you can, God bless you, and definitely do it if they're available and they're obviously being safe. But if you're going to use some kind of digital marketing, well, do you know what your close rate is? If 20 people find you, how many do you usually close out of those 20? What kind of a channel did they come through? And what do those ratios mean about your profitability? Because if you need to spend $10 at an expo per 20 sales leads, you buy a booth for $200 and you get 20 sales leads that day, each lead costs you $10. If you closed on 2 of them and each one of those gave you $100 in profit, then you made your money back on the expo. That's simple math. You can't make a decision about building a marketing campaign if you don't know what Stephanie just said, that you don't know how many leads come in, how well do I close them? What's been your experience in people having that kind of financial understanding?
Yeah, most don't. It's more about, oh, I got a booking and my commission is $600. So that's great, but what comes in, even if or if you think how much it costs you to run your business per hour, like we do not earn income for every single hour that we work in our business. No. So that's why I created a spreadsheet that like kind of inflates that number based on the percentage of time that I feel like I spend on actually booking activities, like working with clients versus non-client work.
Is that the spreadsheet that you wanted to give away today, Stephanie?
Yeah, I do have that. And it's all calculated. Like you don't have to think, you just input and like everything comes out of it. And people can use it, to make whatever decisions they want.
Right.
But even like you were saying earlier with an hourly rate, and say you're booking, we'll do a very simple one, an all-inclusive resort.
Right.
And say it takes you on average, and I know this is probably going to sound high to most people, but 3 hours for that particular booking. And when I talk about 3 hours, it's from start, like when you start the inquiry with the client to, the consultation, the quotes, the actual booking part, the follow-ups, the documents, like preparing your documents, contacting the resort ahead of time for them and following up after they return. Right. Just average of 3. So if your hourly rate to run your business inflated to at least make sure it covers for your non-client booking times is $100 per hour. So you need to make at least $300 in commission on that. And now if you have a host agency involved who keeps a certain percentage of that, like all of this and like all that factors in, because there's so many different variables that we don't think about. If our host keeps 20%, 30%, whatever it is. Right. So now that means the total commission we see on the invoice from the supplier, what we want to keep from it.
Yeah. I mean, so, if you're listening to Stephanie, and Stephanie, if you want to drop that URL in the Facebook comments, either now or after, But we'll also, for anybody who watches this on YouTube after it's edited and put up on YouTube, I'll also drop the URL and you can go over to Stephanie's website, check that out, hopefully get to know her a little better. Stephanie, do you find that there's like a tenure of age of advisors, not chronological age, but chronological age of the business owner? That it's like 3 years where they start to get serious about their finances, or is it 10 years? Do you find that like people finally start graduating into, no, I got to own this?
Yeah, and it's still because when you have the people who aren't comfortable with their numbers, like their tendency is, I don't even want to look at it. As long as I have money in my bank account, you know, to pay the bills as they come in, to pay off my credit card or whatever it is. But then you have agency owners, and I think you find the ones that have sub agents underneath of them, or ICs, that take a little more interest in it, because now they're wanting to make sure that the agents working for them are also helping them be profitable.
Right.
And they need to know this. And then also, you know, the seasonality of everything. We all know wave season. If we've been in this industry for long enough, we've heard of wave season. But then there's like these mini wave seasons, and maybe a wave season is not the standard, you know, January through early April. And we don't know what it's going to be for 2021. That's yet to be seen. But based on even like what types of trips you book, your wave can be different, you know, than the standard. So knowing those, I find are agents who've been in the business a little bit longer, and they're, even if it's not documented on a spreadsheet or on paper, they tend to know when to expect their influx of bookings. And then, you know, when people are traveling and that income comes in at that point. But the new ones are, unless they have a financial and an entrepreneur mind coming into it, it's more like, let's just book these. I want my clients, I want to book their trips, and, you know.
And, you know, what Stephanie also just alluded to is the seasonality of income. There are some people, when you're in retail, you know, what do we all know about Black Friday? There's a reason why Black Friday is so important, because the heavy volume of retail sales starts to come in around the holiday season, because so many people, that is a fixed time where they are going to spend a lot of their retail spend. You know, there's other times of the year, back to school for families. Well, guess what? For an older couple whose kids are grown, August is not a big retail spend period. So if your client is older couples, then you're in the retail space, you're not, you know, you're not going to market to those people in August. And so that seasonality starts to get reflected in, you know, I like to do, I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I like to have at a minimum a monthly cash flow statement, so that my clients can see, how does the income flow through the business? How do their expenses flow through the business? Do they always have to borrow money from their own personal bank account in January and February, because that's the lowest time of the year for actual income coming into the business? And can we fix that so that they figure out a way to make sure their expenses are more even and they're not touching their own personal bank account? Do you find that a monthly cash flow statement is helpful? And if so, at what point, you know, experience-wise, tenure-wise, should a business owner sort of set a milestone for themselves and say, no, I'm going to do this. My business is serious enough now that I've got to start understanding what cash flow looks like?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, it's as soon as possible, because the more you know earlier on, the better decisions you can make going forward. But for most businesses, it's probably at least 5 years in before they start really, you know, looking, because what will happen, or what I found that happens, is they're not very profitable in the beginning. And it's because they don't understand all the indicators that they can look at, you know, to be profitable. And then that's when they go to the numbers to kind of dissect all that and figure out, like, where am I spending that I don't need to spend? Or what am I doing that's kind of blocking income, and where can I make more to cover the expenses I have? I mean, it's basic math, adding and subtracting.
Yep.
You make more, you spend less, they all affect the bottom line in one way or another.
But even though it's as simple, and Stephanie, I know you've got a total subtext under what you just said, but even though it sounds simple, the levers that you can pull to make that simplicity a reality, I'll make more, I'll spend less, depends on you having those numbers laid out. We know so many clients who put on hold certain marketing tools right now because their attitude is, why should I be paying Canva a monthly subscription of $19.99 or whatever it is I'm paying when marketing's not going to generate any sales leads right now? They've made that decision. And what I tell them is, okay, but that's $20 a month. Marketing generates sales leads. Sales leads don't buy tomorrow. They buy over time. And if you know what the sales cycle is for your ideal clients, your best clients, maybe marketing was the right investment right now. And instead you should have taken the $19.99 out of this other thing that you do. And if you don't have that laid out, you can't cut your expenses the right way and have the right result. Do you have any, tools that you give them, even if it's like, mnemonics or some way for them to think that way, to understand how to perform those simplistic calculations?
The best way to do it is keep track of it in a spreadsheet. And I find for my own travel side of the business, a lot of my yearly subscriptions come up in November, December, and January. That's just, and it's probably because we're not doing as much client work because we're not booking as many trips during that time of year. That's when we start signing up for all these things like, oh, well, let me try this and let me learn this. And that's just when the renewal is, right. Unfortunately. But one of the main things that I did when the pandemic hit, probably one of the very first things, is I went through my credit card statement and my bank statement. And I was like, what can I do without right now? Because it didn't, I wasn't trying to cancel everything, but it was more like, this appears to be that it's going to be long-term. So how much cash can I preserve so that the routine things that I don't want to let go of, I'm fine. I have the money to pay them every single month.
Right.
Opt in for so many things. Like, how many do you actually use?
Right.
People, I know I have a lot, and I've been very careful lately to say yes to things. Like, do I really need that right now? Like, and if I signed up for it, what am I going to do with it after I get it? Or is it just sit?
Oh my God. I love what you just said. If you're going to get a subscription to Canva, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to put together a campaign of some kind of really beautiful images and a great call to action over time, organic if you can't afford paid, and try to see if it nurtures some existing followers into the sales funnel? Is that what you're going to do? Or are you just going to get Canva because you like to play with it and it looks pretty on your feed? Stephanie is just hitting every single point. What are you going to do with that? How does it either show up as the pre-income portion of your cash flow statement, the 50 sales leads, close rate of 10% is 5 closed sales. That's one metric. Versus those 5 closed sales on average, because I'm looking at, river cruises, and I'm going to get a down payment because that river cruise company decided to now start paying commission on down payments. Oh, wait a second. That Canva subscription in one client actually paid for itself for the rest of the year. If you don't know your numbers, you can't even have that mental math. You can't even do that simple mental math. Why do you think people don't do that? Is it because they just don't know the numbers, or do we go back to the original discussion? It's uncomfortable to them. It hurts.
I think it's a combination of both. I don't see a lot of tools in our industry that make it easy and simple for advisors to just plug in. And having stepped outside of the industry, especially this year, to go through other programs, it's plug and play. Like, they make it so easy. Why can't we do that?
Yes.
And that way everybody has the tools and everybody's successful with them. and you adjust them to work for your business, because one size does not fit all.
No. Stephanie, that is one of the things that I've been writing about a lot in travel research online the last 3 or 4 months that I've been writing for Richard Earls, is I really think the industry needs to step up and help solve some of these problems for travel advisors, because you're right. They do not have the tools so many other industries have. I ran a coffee shop. I owned and managed my own coffee shop for 3 years. And the tools that Square gave me, point of sale and back office, was phenomenal. All of my sales, if I could get that one cash register to be the principal place where me and my employees booked everything. And then I also had to overlay, my invoices and my expenses going out in a similar place. But if I could have that all in one place, I could make these decisions plug and play. We don't have that in travel.
Mm-mm. We don't. I mean, we have a lot of great travel education programs. There's so many of them out there, and several new ones, that really focus on specific areas. But to me, having been through quite a few of them already, there's still theory and concept focused mostly. And so that will get you so far. And there are advisors who will go through and figure out how to make it for them and do the step by step. But then there's others that they kind of get in their own way, and they start second guessing themselves. And they're like, what if I don't know how to do this? Or what if I get it wrong? Or I miss a step, and they don't do it. So they get all this knowledge, but do nothing with it. And then they still remain frustrated, where if we had programs that, maybe honed in on one specific area and not just taught the theory and the concept, but actually did like implementation support, and gave the tools and helped guide people through it to where they do feel more comfortable, then now they can go out on their own because they've accomplished something, and they can move on to the next thing that keeps them stuck in their business, whatever that is.
Right. Is that what you try to do, Stephanie, in your consulting business? Do you try to stay close to the advisors after you've taught them, so that you're kind of like a running coach? You're running beside them and helping them think about what they're doing, get that muscle memory going, ask you questions if something doesn't feel right. Is that your approach?
Yeah. So everything that I've been doing so far is more like implementation groups. So we talk about a topic and we work through it together, and then we go to the next part of it and we work through it together. And eventually, that will build into something else. But it's not taking them through an entire travel business from A to Z. It's like, let's start here and let's dive really deep into this so that you understand it and can do it on your own. And now you can repeat that as many times as you need to for your business. And then we'll focus on another area and do the same thing, because I think that is what helps people feel like they're moving forward versus I have all stuff and I don't know what to do with it.
I love your theory. And again, I'll go back to running coaching. I knew if I could get somebody to about 40 to 45 days of running 2 to 3 times a week and sticking to the program that I designed for them, if I could get them to 40, 45 days, the muscle memory built, the enjoyment and the comfortability of this new behavior just became natural to them. I love your strategy. That is an excellent way to do it. Do you find that there is like a number of days where people finally, you can almost see the light bulbs going off that they're getting it?
Absolutely. And it's different for every person because, we all have our own gifts, abilities, and talents in various areas. But that's also another thing why I like taking people through in groups, because, I'm very analytical and numbers person. And over the past several years, trying to branch out from that and really get into the creative space. But when that's the way you're wired, it takes a lot of effort to harness both of them.
It does.
So in groups, you always have people who are good at one thing and not another, and vice versa. And everybody helps everybody.
Yeah, they can.
Versus the one-on-one, they're relying on just me and my opinions and my thoughts. Like, let's everybody brings something different to the table.
Great concept. And, we could see it in the running groups. We would have, like you said, we'd have different people on the spectrum. And it was amazing because like the really strong, fast people would hold back and stay with the slower people in the groups. But then during the week when we didn't run together, they'd go off and do their track work, and then they could really explore extending themselves. But when we were together, we fed off of each other. We had one woman who had been a soccer star in Division III college, had asthma, and she told us as we went from spring to summer, she said, I'm going to be slowing down because the summer weather, my asthma gets bad. And the way the group stuck with her and pulled her along was just marvelous. And it inspired all of us to give and take with each other. I love your concept. I want to join now.
No, it's that whole energy. We feed off of each other's energy. And, especially in my groups, I'm like, no negativity here. Like, this is all positive. It doesn't matter if you're frustrated or not. We're going to figure out how to get you unfrustrated, because that's just what holds you back. Right. And it took me learning that myself to be able to see and kind of evolve to a different level with kind of like, I don't want to call it mindset, but it is really mindset.
I tried to teach myself Adobe Premiere Pro between like March of this year and now. And there's so many times when I'm sitting by myself at 10:30 at night, I'm struggling with the technology because it's a software tool. And why am I not getting this right? What am I doing wrong? And I don't have a group to jump into and say, hey guys, can you take a look at this? And very frankly, there's some groups that I have been in where there's like, geez, you don't know that by now? And it just sort of shuts you down. Yeah. Having a welcoming mindset, like a group like Stephanie's, can be so perfect for so many people. So definitely consider exploring that with her. As we start to kind of get to wrapping this up, Stephanie, do you think there are some questions that maybe a travel entrepreneur should be asking themselves that might help them sort of self-diagnose if they don't have the good fortune of joining your group, if they don't have a good group of other advisors? Questions that they might want to ask themselves to kind of solve for their, lack of financial enthusiasm? Have you ever kind of looked at the psychology of it and thought, wow, if this person could just figure this out, they could probably come to terms with it and move forward?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with our beliefs and our belief system and how we were programmed as children. And, you and I are close in age. So we were brought up in a different generation, and we took on what our parents and our grandparents told us about money. Yep. And my parents still say the same things. And I have to kind of separate myself from that because I'm trying to detach and change those beliefs. But so many of us think about, like, we tie our income and our money to our worth. Right. And we tie it to our success. When there's a quote that I love from Buddha, attachment is the root of all evil. So we have to just detach from those numbers. They don't mean anything. They're indicators. And the indicators are there for us to be able to make better decisions and improve. So if we can let that go and just start with one, people probably get overwhelmed because they see, oh, you need to track this and this and this and this, and they don't know where to start. Like, just start with one. Right. And then move to the next. Because one of my recent mentors said, we get an overwhelm when we look at the entire staircase, when in reality, we just need to take the first step. Yes. So just coming up with something simple, and the simple one would be similar to what you would give to your tax accountant at the end of the year. Money in, money out, like what you're spending your money on, and then move forward. Like, okay, so now for my money out, what can I pare down there? And do I really need all of these? Are they really supporting me in my business? Or did I just sign up for something and forget? And now I'm being charged monthly and using, doing nothing with it. And then on the income side, that's when you look at like, well, how much am I making per booking on average? Like, what's my average commission? And then maybe once you figure that out, dissecting it a little bit further. So what's my average commission per type of booking? Like it's a cruise or an all-inclusive or an FIT or even a group, because we all know groups take way more work than booking like one couple or one family to travel. So yeah, that would be just start with one. Like,
as Stephanie was saying that, what I was visualizing in my head was the way that we were taught to write essays back in grade school and junior high school. And you were taught this, like, you're going to make 3 points, the numeral 1, and then below the numeral 1, you'd have 3 supporting things, the small letter I, 2 I's, 3 I's. And so whatever that top thing, that number 1 was, maybe it's, what Stephanie said, the top number 1 question to ask yourself is, how much revenue do I take in? And then the small I that goes underneath it is now, how much revenue do I bring in from cruises? And number 2 is, how much revenue do I bring in from FITs? And that's all you're asking yourself. And you're going to write those numbers in. But now below that, you could go one more level. Once you get those in, you could say to yourself, how much commission did I earn from those cruises? How much commission did I? And you're just asking yourself simplistic questions. And maybe you're not even putting it in a spreadsheet. All you're doing is putting it in a notebook somewhere. Very simple way to get started. And once you're growing comfortable with those numbers, you may even start to visually see the ratios. Wow. Gee, look at that on the cruises. I had, $400,000 in cruise revenue, but I only had $7,000 in cruise income. But look at the FITs. I only did 200,000 there, but I did 30,000 in income. Visually, you may start to see it, and then you're going to want to plot it in a spreadsheet and ask the spreadsheet to start giving you averages per transaction. And now you're going to start to feel like you own these numbers, and you're going to start to scratch your chin and go, oh, wait a second. There's income over there that I might not be able to do over here, especially with the volume I can handle. It really is that simplistic essay format.
Yeah. And, taking it a step further on all of that, you look at the numbers and you can, once you calculate how much per type, then also factor in, because this isn't a like end all be all decision, but what are you passionate about and what do you like working on? Because the ones that you don't like working on, you're always going to have that resistance against them, and it's going to pull down your frequency and your vibration and your thinking. It's all tied. We don't want that negative energy coming out there. So really, if it's profitable and you love doing it, focus there, and then do more of that, because that's what's really going to make you successful in your travel business, is to be profitable and to do the ones you love.
Yeah, it's going to be so much easier for you to get through difficult times, to work those extra hours, if, like Stephanie said, that's at the heart of what you enjoy. I have found that I love video editing. I don't know why, but it makes me feel good to go through video and cut this and cut that out and try to bring this visual to life. And so I want to do it more. And it's easier for me to stay up late and put in a couple of extra hours to perfect something for my marketing, because I'm enjoying it. I'm aligned with it. Stephanie, how can people best get in touch with you? What is the best way? Is it your website? Is it your email address? How do you like for people to find you and start to engage with you?
So I have my travel business website, and they can just email me directly, especially with the financial, if they have any financial questions. When I post the link in the comments, it'll take them to my website to grab that spreadsheet I talked about. So all my information will be there. And I know coming out of this, there's going to be people that have more questions, but maybe that's an opportunity, to build more spreadsheets and to put more tools out there to help people understand things better and just make it easier.
You know what? I so I am so grateful that there are voices like yours in this chorus to travel advisors. Carmen Perez also tries to get people focused this way. I know some of the mastermind people at the major host agency networks have talked to me about how they try to get advisors. We really need to get a groundswell throughout the industry, reminding travel advisors, you are a business owner that sells travel. You are not a travel seller. That is not what you are. You eventually sell travel and hopefully you do a lot of it, but you own a business that does that. And if you don't get that first part of it, and that's why I wanted Stephanie to talk with me today, because there are so many people out there like Myrna, myself, Stephanie, Carmen, who we just want everybody to get better at this. The stronger you guys are, guess what? The more money people like Stephanie and I are going to make, because you're going to come to us for a little bit of advice to supercharge things. But if you don't have those basic fundamentals, it is so hard for Stephanie to make a difference for you. She's got to get you to that foundational level where you're comfortable, you're starting to see the numbers pop in your brain, and then she can take that enthusiasm and that knowledge, and now she can say to you, okay, what if you invested more money on this part of your business to attract more clients over there? And that'll turn into more profits. We can predict that with some level of certainty. Oh my goodness. Now all of us benefit. All of us will have more money in our bank accounts.
Well, and one thing that stuck with me through trainings that I've done outside of the industry is you simplify to amplify. And we overcomplicate so many things. Like, let's not make it complicated. Simplify it for yourself, because once you get past that roadblock, like, you're just taking off. Yeah. And in order to do that, it has to click for you mentally. So simplify. And then the other one was, you can grow organically. There's nothing wrong with that. And most advisors do that through their social media and email marketing and all of those things.
Yep.
Right. But that's the slow road. I'm not going to lie. That is the slow road. Paying to play is like the rocket, the fuel behind it. So
it really is. It's unfortunate, but it is. The world has changed, ladies and gentlemen. And if you have not put your toe in the water to at least start to experience how the change, we're working with a client right now. They are trying to sell a product that's probably worth at least $20,000 to $25,000 per sale, based on it's a small group concept that they came up with. We've already scored them 10 sales leads with phone numbers in the last 2.5 weeks. They've spent money on Myrna and I and the ads, so they've got an expense involved in it. But if they just close one of those, they paid for Myrna, myself, and the ads 3 or 4 times over with their commission. They're dipping their toe in, they're moving through the process, they're learning. And Stephanie does the same thing. We're all trying to do the same thing. We do it in our unique way. God bless Stephanie. She attracts clients who are looking for her. Myrna and I hopefully are doing the same thing. Find somebody who is the person you want to align with to help you get that rocket going. We want that rocket ship going. We don't want you going sideways.
Yeah. And the other thing I've learned too is, it doesn't have to be just one person, because we all talk about things differently. Yeah. And some people will click more, with how you say it versus me. And even though the concepts and the teachings may be the same, like, everybody, is not going to work in the same environment. So you have to decide which is for you. But the thing is, the point there is to decide. Like, yes. Don't stay in doing nothing or, talking yourself out of it all the time. And I can attest to that, because that's where I was. And the main reason I was there is because I didn't trust myself to make the right decision.
Right.
On anything.
Oh my God. I can empathize with everything Stephanie just said. I am still there in some phases of my professional career. And certainly the pandemic hasn't helped, because I can't go to networking events as easily. I can't sit at a dinner with people and share our stories and be a little vulnerable. And then you realize you're not that much different than everybody else. And that frees you up, and you can sit a little bit, stand a little bit straighter up, because you realize, don't abuse yourself. Don't put yourself down. Take that step. Don't let the paralysis prevent you from taking that step. So,
yeah, and there's so much of that in our industry, because we see the faces and we see where they are now as successful people, but very rarely do they talk about the struggles along the way.
Right.
And it's just not, people aren't that transparent and not that open, because they're afraid of being judged. And I was the same way until the pandemic hit. And I was like, I don't care. I'm putting this out there because it's not only helping me, it's helping other people.
Right.
And when they see that, then they gain more confidence in themselves. And literally, I know we had a conversation a few weeks ago, like, forget stepping out of the box, like, destroy the box, get rid of it. It doesn't even exist anymore, because you can create whatever it is that you want to create.
Yes.
You just have to want to do it.
You might recycle a piece of the box, but you don't have to keep the whole thing.
Correct. Like, get rid of it. And I did say burn the box, but with all the wildfires somebody brought to my attention, we don't burn boxes. So
not in California or Colorado, no.
Exactly. So we won't burn the box, but we will destroy it.
We will. We'll stomp on it. We'll put it in the recycling bin and let them pick it up on Monday morning.
Exactly.
Stephanie, I'm so glad we finally met. I am so supercharged by your enthusiasm, for your knowledge, for trying to help people grow. Real quick,
sctraveldesign.com.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my website.
And your email address is?
The best one, you can just use hello@sctraveldesign.com.
Great. So guys, if Stephanie seems to align with you personally, please contact her as soon as you can. Get to know her, figure out what it is you're trying to accomplish, and find mentors that are going to get you out of that paralysis phase. You've got to start to own those financials. They are everything to your business. You're not doing this for free. Your time is money. You have expenses. Take those first, baby steps with Stephanie, with us, with your friend, with a friend who happens to be an accountant. We don't care where you start. Start taking those steps. And once you're comfortable owning it, I guarantee you the business is going to change for you. Your eyes are going to open. Stephanie, thank you so much again for your time. I hope that you and I can work together on a number of initiatives in the future, because we do need to raise the tide for all travel advisors. I am so focused on them. Suppliers will get through this. The destinations will get through this. They always find more money than they originally thought they had. But advisors, with the limited amount of access to capital that they have, they're the ones who really need that rocket ship. So, if there's any way you and I can collaborate, and with anybody else out there who's interested, it's time we level the playing field and let the entrepreneurs have the same abilities that the big guys have. That's the way we're going to survive.
Absolutely.
Great. Have a great rest of your week. I will be editing the video. We'll be putting snippets out of some of the great pearls of wisdom that you've heard from Stephanie. So if you can't sit through the whole thing again, you'll have little bits and pieces of it. But look forward to that, hopefully this weekend, up on our YouTube channel. And this will always be archived here on Facebook. So you can always come back at some point and watch us here. Thanks again, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Oh, no, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.